Recording in progress.
Alrighty, so we're getting after it then. Welcome to our first episode of the Lunatics podcast. I'm Tyler Edwards, your host for this fun-filled show. We're going to take dives into all things St. Louis sports. It doesn't mean we're not going to branch out into other things. We've got stuff like the NFL. We as far also European soccer, which John and I are both big fans of. I like to think of myself as more of an agnostic sports enthusiast, but St. Louis is where I kind of fell in love with sports and my passions have grown. So now I'm going to let myself hand it over to John, my co-host and the producer of this wonderful show.
Yeah, so I'm John. I'm also a big sports enthusiast. Before I really get too much into this, the first thing I have to say is that we are a no bleep podcast. So if you have language that you do not want any children to hear, you really should earmuff them like now, because that's your only warning. What the fuck does it mean to be sports agnostic?
I don't just follow any one thing. I'm open to everything, John.
Try anything once kind of guy.
I'd try anything twice, John. You know me.
It's fair enough.
Lord knows I don't learn after once. So that probably means we'll have at least 2 episodes.
At least 2 episodes. Well, like you, big sports fan, especially St. Louis-based sports. As you can see, we're both repping City gear. If you're watching or if you're listening, just know we're wearing the exact same St. Louis City SC hat. Both grew up diehard Cardinals baseball fans. And like you said, we've got a lot of different sports that we're interested in, but we're going to focus for St. Louis for this. So yeah, what do you think? Should we just hop right on into City then?
Yeah, I guess fun. I guess anybody who wants to know, John and I both grew up in mid-Missouri, but have known each other since freshman year of college, solid 15 years ago now. If you had forgotten how long it'd been, just want to make sure you feel aged as much as I did when I realized that the other day.
My back is making me feel my age. So thank you for the extra reminder, though.
Hey, I'm always here for you. Alrighty. Yeah, let's talk. I can again jumpstart things. Let's get into City. Again, the most exciting sports going on in St. Louis this year, especially with the way the Cardinals have played, and we'll get into that more in a few minutes. But City's been exciting. They've been fun. I mean, there's a ton of podcasts and other shows out there that have talked about this a lot already, but we're obviously coming off a break. Our first game back is in just a couple of days now. Where do you see, or how do you see some of the moves from St. Louis City fitting in with where the current roster and how things are going to change coming out of this break?
Yeah, so I mean, if we talk about how the recent moves are going to, I mean, first let's start with Joakim Nilsson, right? So yeah, it's not really a move, but we haven't seen him the whole year. So basically, we just got an all-star transfer center back in. And so I think that's going to have a huge effect. I'm not sure if he starts or not. I kind of go back and forth. I kind of think maybe they take it easy, but I also kind of think if you know you're going to start him within the next couple of games, why not start him for the first one back and let him really get the full experience and see. We know he can go 80 minutes. He just did it for City 2 a few weeks ago. We'll see.
I was like, I'm going to jump in there on the Nielsen, right? I know he went 80 minutes for City 2. But I have concerns about the pace of playing with the top club.
As I was saying it, I was thinking about that.
I don't see him going a full 80. I could see him coming on and potentially being subbed out at 60 if he starts, or being subbed in at 60 if he doesn't.
Yeah, or just do a half and a half type of thing. But yeah, could be either way. And we know he did not play the scrimmage in Atlanta either. I was kind of hoping to see him go for that just so he could get that difference in pace firsthand. But, they wanted to rest him, make sure that his knee's recovering well from having a couple of games under his belt. And I can't fault him for that.
I agree. I think there's a lot there. And again, as you said, it's like having an open transfer of getting, an all-star center back without having to give up anything extra to get said all-star center back, which is Nice luxury when you're on top of the West coming out of the break.
Absolutely, absolutely. But yeah, apparently he's even still having that fluid drained from his knee like at least once a week. So even though he can run and play, those bursa sacs are still just hugely inflamed, it sounds like. So I mean, yeah, we'll use him back in. We're in a good spot, and we'll talk about this later, but our center back depth is just crazy good for MLS anyway. So we really can afford the time for him. But the other moves that they've made, I think starting with Torsen is kind of the bigger one, right? Knut Torsen, Icelandic winger from Beerschot, Belgium. Just love that name for a team. Fan already.
Did you
Um,
see the interview of him trying to tell them how to say his name?
yes, I did.
And that the Belgium squad used to call him tourism.
Yeah, tourism, but it's Thorism, like Thor he does, and I still butchered it, but yeah. Well, so they did fitness tests for him this week when he got there, right? And mind you, he's been playing in Europe, so he just is coming off of his off season because the transfer
Mm-hmm.
was completed, probably about a month ago
Yeah.
now. So he really didn't even do preseason over there. And apparently, he really impressed the coaching staff with his fitness level already. So much so that they mentioned, it sounded like, that they're even considering him being in the lineup on Sunday. Obviously, there's still some chemistry and all of that doesn't just come overnight. But when you play fast, you just kind of go for the open spaces as best you can sometimes and hope everyone else notices.
And he has an advantage there. I think, similar to Big Sam coming in to fill in for Klaus
Absolutely.
and things, is that when you're playing the press,
Mm-hmm.
there's a little bit more forgiveness at the front line than
Absolutely.
maybe if you're playing in the back line. So I
Oh
think
yeah,
he's
you
got
got it.
that. That's going to help that even opportunity even more.
Right. Well, just your distance from goal gives you that bit of an advantage there, or that more leeway. Well, the other thing that I really like about Torsen and how he's going to fit in is, when you look at the skill sets of the guys that we have, and you look at his highlight reel from Beershot, almost all of his goals came from practically outside the box. Whereas a lot of our other guys, they really like to get it in close before they take their shot. And so when you think about it from how does he change our look, a lot of the teams that we've struggled against play that low block where we can't get into the penalty box at all. And so if we have someone who can actually put those shots, in the net from that far out, I think that's a huge game-changing ability that we have. On top of the fact that he is apparently Thor's son.
That helps, man. That helps.
Unfortunately, his brother Erling Haaland got all of the actual skills. But
Maybe we'll land him in city here in a couple of years.
maybe. I think we can do it from one city to the next.
One city to the other.
Completely unrelated, but I did see, I think it was on ESPN, Newcastle and Man City are playing this weekend, and they called it the Oil Classico. And that is my new favorite name for that. I just
Hey, man,
had to mention it.
I would like to point out I cheered for Newcastle long before they were rich and good. So leaving that out there for what it's worth whenever that we get to those conversations later, if we have enough episodes.
Well, it really will just come down to how bored we may or may not get with the Blues and the winner. Because, yeah. Um, but yeah, I think it does, increase competition across the whole front line having Torsen. Supposedly he can play every position along the front line, although looking at his highlights, he seems to be most effective on the left wing. Um, Unfortunately, that's where two of our favorites also play with Celio and Stroud. But I think Celio could, and this is kind of going back to Nielsen, if we transition to a three center back look, well, I think both of those two guys naturally start looking more into wing back positions as opposed to wingers, or even just as options for wing back positions, depending on form.
I love Stroud's feistiness. And I think he still has a place with the team moving forward. I just don't see him as a starter in the second half of the season in big games.
Right.
Especially if Thorson is actually what we think he could be.
Right.
And Alm coming back and really truly being fit again, I think he's a better player on the ball than Stroud is. And I think
Yeah.
depends on how physical we want to be. Obviously, Stroud is a good physical presence. Um, but him on that
Completely
left side and trying to play
dangerous.
that. My biggest complaints with Stroud is that he can't finish with his left foot.
Oh
Um,
no, no, the left foot
and
is
so
definitely he's
and
uncomfortable throwing.
he's not the type that's going to be scoring goals by cutting back across the middle and ripping shots, aka Leuven. So
Yeah,
he has to play on the right side, and I just don't know that we have the space for him over there for him to be an effective attacker.
right.
So he's a very much to me a great player and somebody that I don't want to leave City
Right.
because he definitely has his place, but I don't see him as the when we need a goal, he's not the guy.
Yeah. And he's primarily played for us on the left, and I think mostly because is very clearly a right wing type of guy. Um, when you think about some of the times that Stroud has been at his most effective, it's when he's come off of the bench as a super sub type of deal. Because,
Mm-hmm.
and the same thing with Celio. Those two, and honestly, you could probably make a case for all of them too, because all three of them have one trait that all three of them have is that they are just going to, run nonstop. And if you bring them on,
Ostrak is another one.
Ostrak too, yeah. You bring those guys late on in the games with fresh legs, they don't have to worry about holding out for a full 90, right? I mean, you can tell Ostrak especially plays differently when he starts. Celio plays differently when he starts versus when he's a sub. And you know, we played sports our whole lives, right? Growing up, like you want to start, but they are definitely, I think, at their most effective when they're coming off of the bench because of that one point.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think, especially, Celio, and I think we really saw it in the Club America match. He's got great on the ball skills and being able to
Yes.
come in and not have to hold back pace and be able to go all out for those 30 minutes rather than 90. You saw the difference in how quickly he changed the feel of the game
Right.
offensively for City, and it was impressive, really.
Right.
So I think that's something to keep in mind for all of those guys.
Absolutely.
I think
Well,
we've gotten stuck here on for a little bit, so I was
yes.
like, we've got a
We
lot
got to
to
move
kind of
on. We got
get
to move
through.
on.
So, but I think again, I agree. I think Thorson is going to be, if he's not starting, I think we see him Sunday either way. And I think the person that he pushes out of the lineup regularly is Stroud. I see him coming in and becoming that left side with Alm on the right.
Yeah.
And then again, we'll talk more about center backs here in a minute, but I think how I think you and I have a similar opinion of where we'll end up with the lineup in the long run. So, all right, moving on. Hit
Moving
me with it,
on.
John.
Anthony Marcanic, right? Traded what was it, 75,000 in GAM for this year. With our next year's first round super draft pick and a conditional 75,000 in GAM 2024 GAM
Mm-hmm.
form from the Colorado Rapids. Did you get that message?
Mm-hmm.
You did?
You're good.
Okay.
You're fine. Keep going.
So with
Well,
the St. Louis,
time out. You're gonna have to cut that piece out.
I'll edit that. Don't worry about it. So anyway, Anthony Marcanic traded him from Colorado for 75,000 in GAM this year, 75,000 in GAM conditionally next year, and then our next year's first round super draft pick, which is basically a lottery situation anyway. But he plays left back, so left back is in an area where we don't really have an answer for yet. Thinking about who we've got there, I am reasonably happy with Hebert as far as a defensive focus left back goes, but in terms of unlocking that position to really kind of create the best value or what we traditionally would want in a left back, I can see that he may not be the permanent answer at that position. But then it does raise the question, what do we do with Johnny Nelson? What do we do with Sommer Pedro? One thing I do want to mention before I let you kind of get your thoughts out is the MLSPA released their list of free agents for the end of the year, or I guess MLS did, maybe not the Players Association, but MLS did. And Johnny Nelson is the only City player listed as a free agent at the end of the year, I believe. We do have a lot of guys with options that we can pick up for next year, which is a whole separate thing. But that was an interesting little thing I had heard that Nelson is listed as a free agent for the end of the year.
So, I think it's definitely interesting. But, I wonder if, I'm wondering like where we fall with some of these pieces. And, we have a lot of guys that we're trying to develop. I just think that we might sometimes I wonder if we have one or too many, um, you know, not one or too many, but if we're trying to make a bigger deal of some of these pieces than we are, right? I think this is a potential developmental piece that
Sure.
falls in line with Pedro and with them. And I think it's a depth piece, right? And I think the
Absolutely.
hope is that one or two of these guys works out and then we go from there. Nelson's definitely the best of the bunch. But we've got other guys there. He who shall not be named, and that I've ripped off and on forever, with Jensen. I mean, like Jensen's got a lot of potential, but he's not there yet. And I feel like he impressed a lot in practice, and they kind of tried to make him be one of the guys, and he's not ready. And so I wonder if some of that is going to, there was a lot of talk about this because this was the first, trade signing that we had.
Right.
How is this going to impact things? I think he's going to move from what I've heard, from what I've seen, what I've heard, what I've read. I think he's got a chance to kind of potentially move, ahead of some of those guys.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we're going to have to loan some of these guys out to,
Mm-hmm.
and to get them the experience they need if they're going to be ready. Because while City 2 is great, I mean, look at the leaps and bounds that Big Sam's made being loaned out and being able to be the guy week in and week out.
Right.
So
Right.
I think they're going to need something like that. And I think Markanich, however you say his name, he's new, so forgive me. But
You'll
I
have to
don't
watch some
see him.
highlights to figure it out.
Yeah, you got to watch a lot more of those. But I see him definitely as a depth move, but definitely and also a developmental piece. But I think he's a piece that they're hoping they can truly really develop,
Mhm.
for when we lose some of these guys. Because I mean,
Yep.
if we keep playing as well as we have, we're not keeping all these players.
Well, no, no, absolutely not. And I mean, I think Hebert is on a couple-year deal. Pedro is on a longer deal. Remember, Pedro was the very first signing the team made, right? And
Yeah.
I mean, sure, it could have been trying to connect with the Bosnian community in the city, but I also kind of at the time felt like they were legitimately thinking he was going to be the guy. He played a lot in City too last year. Now,
Hmm.
that being said, I don't know if Boots expected John Nelson to be made available by Cincinnati either, because I believe we grabbed him in the super draft.
Yeah.
And that does change things. Uh, but yeah, and I mean, I fully expect that Hebert's going to move back to a full center back role next season, right? I think right now this may be what they're doing for this year, but I think next year he's back to playing center back, and then the question is Nelson, Pedro, Mechanic, and Pedro could be loaned out. I mean, he's been pretty consistently linked as someone who City is shopping around, although no concrete offers have formalized. Um, but yeah, I don't know.
I think it'll be interesting to see. I definitely think there's a lot of opportunity there, and I think City's done a good job of setting themselves up,
Yeah.
um, as far as what the future is going to hold. And again, I think, how Nielsen holds up
Mm-hmm.
second half of the season is going to play a part into some of those plans as well, and what we're going to be doing with those backline players.
Right. Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And I mean, champagne problems. Champagne
Yes.
problems. Oh my God, our potential top MLS defender caliber player, can't find the field because the backups are playing so well that it's hard to justify bringing them back too quickly from injury. Woe is me, but
God. Yeah.
we'll see.
Well, woe's
Got a lot
always
of
been you.
I've got a lot of thoughts on the back line depth for next year. when we get
Oh
to
yeah.
our roster
We
construction.
I think you and I and we'll have to do an entire episode just on
Just on that.
roster construction heading into next year because you and I could go on for a while.
That's a 2 hour episode right there, easily.
Alrighty.
The last roster move I wanted to mention, I don't know if you saw the news, came out today. We have a third homegrown signing. As of today, they signed another player from the academy to the first team, Tyson Pierce. He's another local kid, plays midfield in the academy. Don't know a whole lot about him, but I know he was one of 3 players invited with the first team to preseason this year. The other two
Okay.
being Caden Glover and Miguel
Mhm.
Perez, who both were signed to homegrown contracts prior to the season. So he's 16, I believe. So he's definitely someone who they've got an eye on and thinks has a future.
Yeah. I think there's a lot of um, stuff coming up. Caden Glover, I think, is somebody to keep an eye on over the
Oh,
next
absolutely.
2 to 3 years.
Absolutely.
He's gonna be making some big waves, I think, and I'm excited to see what that comes. Just since you mentioned the name, so
Right.
for
Absolutely.
anybody listening who doesn't know who Caden Glover is now, you're gonna know. Trust
Right.
me.
You will absolutely know.
Um,
One
the,
important thing about the Tyson Pierce signing is that he is not on the first team yet. It's more of like a pre-agreement thing. We are out of roster slots for this year. We're at
yeah,
maximum of 30. So start at the end of the season, whenever that flips, he will be signed to a first team contract. So of the 30 guys currently on the team, uh, plus Max Schneider, who was loaned out to City 2, so 31 guys, at least 2 of them will be gone for next year, just because. So,
yep.
yeah,
One last highlight coming up for City 2 roster wise.
sure.
The bow-legged phenom, uh, our boy
Our
João
Brazilian guy,
Klaus,
right? He's
our
a
our
new
our
academy product.
our Brazilian bow-legged phenom João Klaus, and all of his definitely didn't immigrate over from Germany at some point in his past to Brazil and South America. Klaus, he's back. Looks like in the videos that I saw of practice and things.
Yeah, I watched him
I
too.
I think he looks good.
Yeah,
I don't think we see him start. And if we do, again, I think it's going to be similar to Nielsen when he comes
right,
back. It's going to be easing him in, right?
right.
He might do a half at most 60 minutes, but I truly think he's going to be more of like a 60-minute sub,
Yeah,
come in for 30 minutes, especially with the cramping issues and things that he
right,
had early in the season. They're not going to want to push him too hard because, I mean, the guy's great, and we
right.
don't want him to get hurt again. We need him for the playoffs. So
Absolutely. Well, and the other thing with Klaus is a lot of the time, BC coach Bradley Cardinals talked about, with Klaus and also with Alm. He uses the same language whenever Alm goes out, that it has a lot to do with their own confidence in their body. So much so to where, it kind of sounds like, okay, medically, we think you're probably fine, but you still feel like something's not right. And we're not going to push it because, you know your body better than anyone else possibly can.
yeah,
And so when you compare it to say Nielsen, who obviously hasn't played this year and having to ramp him up, if Klaus is looked fine and is feeling good, I could see them giving him a run out, quickly, possibly. Um, but also, I mean, he's been apparently running and biking just like nonstop for 2 months, just around running laps around practice field while everyone else is practicing. So, gotta hope he's got some fitness from that.
yeah, and I think he's going to be good. I think there was a really good there was an interview with Klaus a
Mhm.
little while back during the interview, and uh, when asked about the injury, and he was talking, and he kind of made it apparent that yeah, that's fine. I feel like I'm good to go 80 or 90%, which might be good enough to compete, but I don't know how to go 80 or 90%.
Right.
It's
Which
all
you
or
gotta
nothing,
love
right?
that.
Like,
You gotta
and I
love that
love
from
I
a
love
guy.
that mentality, but I also love the fact that we had players like Big Sam, and again, I'm a big Sam fan, and
Absolutely.
anybody who is a City fan should be a Big Sam fan at this point. But
Yeah.
we had players step up to really hold us down and keep us at the top of the West while he's
Mhm.
been out. And so
Yeah.
uh, I'm excited to see what the future holds. I think, we've got a lot of top line depth, and I think it lines us up really well to potentially see us either loan out or transfer out Giacchini. Hopefully he has, I'm actually really hopeful he has a big second half, because I don't know that he fits into our plans after this year. And I think the more we can get for him, the better. But
Mhm.
again, like we can get into that more at a later date.
Right, right. There's too much to unpack there with it. But yeah, I mean, if we're going to succeed down the stretch, we're going to need Klaus back. Um, I mean, we're in first place in the West and we're 4 points clear with 11 games to go. But I mean, LAFC looked really, really fucking good in Leagues Cup. They had that 1 week off and they came back ready and they're going to be gunning for us. So, I mean, we're going to need all these guys getting healthy and ready to go for sure.
Before LAFC got beat down from the CONCACAF Champions League and all
Hmm.
those games all
Yeah,
back to back, I mean they were the top squad in the West.
right.
So I'm intrigued to see how they rebound after this break, and intrigued, nervous is probably a better word to use.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah,
so
I was really hoping that they beat Monterey just because that would have given them a guaranteed 2 more games in Leagues Cup and also probably would have given them locked them up a CONCACAF Champions Cup spot. And so then they could feel like they already won something and had their spot in the big tournament next year reserved and maybe would let off the gas a little. But the soccer gods were not for that apparently. So they're going to make it a fun race to the end of the season, I think.
yeah, it'll be exciting. I think there's a lot to be excited about, and if we can keep putting these episodes out week by week, we can recap kind of where we're at and what those changes are being, and where we're
Absolutely.
sitting in the standings coming up. But
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be excited about City, and I think it's definitely an exciting and fun way to start our episode, our first episode.
Definitely. Definitely. I mean, we've already talked a lot about Nielsen. I don't think we really need to go too much more into that. We kind of covered him a little bit earlier than we had anticipated originally. Um, I mean, I'm just excited to see him out there and see what he can do against MLS play. That's really it. I think he's ready for it mentally. Hopefully, he's ready for it physically. Sounds like he is. He's been practicing this week, so we'll see.
Yeah, I do want to take this time to point out that anybody who's watching and sees the video on this, uh, I've already downed an entire drink, and I have not seen John take nearly as many sips as I have.
I take
So
bigger drinks.
if I slur my words, everyone knows why. Uh, so let's get into my biggest disappointment in sports right now. And these are my babies. I mean, I grew up with them. My first professional sports game was going to see the Wizard and Ozzie Smith on an opening day and get to see him do the backflip
Yep,
on opening day. So I mean, like that's my first professional sports memory. Our Cardinals have not been our Cardinals,
they have not.
and we know that. The last three series, right? Not as bad. 2-1 against the Rays, which is pretty impressive in Tampa Bay.
Mhm.
Not that they have a home crowd to really affect us much, but uh,
Well, and their
one.
stadium is so freaking weird.
But split the 2 game set against the Royals. 1-2 flopped hard again the chance against the A's to get the sweep. There's times when they look like the team they could be. The one big highlight out of those last 3 series has to be that Libertor game against Tampa
Hmm.
Bay.
Oh, absolutely,
And I
absolute gem.
think it was amazing. I mean, again, career best. He's never even done that in the minor leagues.
Right.
And for him to pitch as well as he did, um, for me though, the big difference in his pitching there was two things that I think have been missing all year for him. He stayed down in the zone
Hmm.
consistently that whole game.
Right.
If you watched the game, or if you watch replays or highlights, watch for that pitch location. It is down in the zone, and if you watch it, check his velocity. His velocity was up 1 to 2 miles an hour on all of his pitches.
Really. Hmm. I did not notice
His
that
and
about the velocity.
so when he came
Or,
back and he pitched against the A's in that potential series sweep that
mhm,
didn't go as we planned, you know, he came in and that velocity was back down.
yeah.
And I think part of that can be attributed. I mean, he's still really young, and they've got him on a more rigorous strength training right now, trying to
Mhm,
keep that velocity up. So I think he's got potential 2 or 3 starter stuff. Um, if they can get him into that, if they can keep that
mhm,
velocity up, and if he can figure out that location piece, keeping it down in the zone is going to be key to
right,
him.
right.
The other big highlight for me, pitching wise, Dakota Hudson, man, that guy has come out recently and been like, you know what? They just got rid of all their starters. Let me just go earn my spot. And I think if you look back the last couple of years, I think this is where the pitch clock is going to be huge.
Hmm.
So in the minors, he does great because he's on a consistent rhythm. But
Hmm.
when Dakota Hudson's pitching his best, there was very little time between pitches.
Absolutely.
Um, and when he was getting rocked and lost his spot in the
Mhm,
rotation, you had batters, stepping out constantly on him,
mhm,
trying to disrupt his rhythm, and
right.
it did.
Absolutely.
So I think Dakota could be that 4 or 5 starter for us next year if he
Mhm,
can, and if not, and if we truly do. There was a big interview with Mo this week,
mhm.
and Mo made it clear that we needed 3 more starters for next
Oh,
year.
yeah. Yeah.
And if we get 3 more, and Dakota Hudson's our 6th guy, you know what? I feel great going into a
Yeah.
season knowing we have these 5 and we can bring up Hudson at any point. But I
Absolutely.
think he's definitely trying to make that case for him to be that 6th guy. I mean, Tink Hens is still 2 years away, easy.
Yeah.
So I think that's important. But I think there's some definite highlights there. I think it's good, and I think they're showing that they still have a little life in them. There's no way we're making a playoff push, and that's fine. But that doesn't mean there's not some more exciting, still several exciting things to look forward to. We
Right.
are recording this on a Thursday night, and so we did just have the game against the Mets that we lost. Um,
Wayno started tonight, didn't he?
he did. We lost, and Wayno gave
Wasn't
up
even that
3.
bad. 4-2.
We lost 4-2. There was really, I watched most of the game,
Hmm.
and there, I haven't had a chance to go back and check some more of the numbers yet, but Wayno looked really good. There was a rough inning where he gave up the 2-run homer.
Sure.
Um, the guy who was on second, God, I'm blanking on his name. Is it McNeil or something for the
Yeah.
Mets?
Yeah.
Literally had a home run robbed
Hmm.
by Jordan Walker, the at
It
bat
helps when you're
before the
like
home
six
run.
eight. So,
Yeah, so but he got the ball. He just couldn't hold on to it, so he ended up
right.
as a
A
double.
double.
And then the next batter, Alonso. I mean, Alonso hits a few home runs here and there anyway, but
He's a big, strong guy.
and I think the thing for me was in both of those at bats,
Hmm.
it almost looked like Wayno either his touch was off or he was trying to challenge them like up in the zone with his
Hmm.
fastball. But when your fastball's topping out at 88, 89, you can't challenge people at the top of the zone.
No.
And I
Wow.
think, you know, this is my hot take on Wayno right now
Okay.
is we're out of it. We are absolutely out of the run.
Let him pitch it. Let him pitch every
Throw
fucking
Wayno
game.
up every 5 days and give him a chance at
Yeah.
200.
He needs 2 wins. 2 wins. I don't care. We're out of
And
it.
the bullpen's
It's fine.
blown 3 for him, I think, this year already.
Right.
So
This year alone. And he's missed, 6 weeks, right? With injury. At least 6 weeks. It's such bullshit. Don't even get me started. And I love our bullpen guys, but they are not guys that we can rely on at this point. When you look at again, the roster construction for this team, we've built our pitching staff, at least at the major league level right now, mostly on guys who pitch to contact. And yet, and I don't want to say it was 100% about the shift, although the shift is gone and that definitely is having a part on it. Our defense has not been as great this year as it has historically been. And so, I mean, it's kind of leaving our guys out there a bit.
yeah, when your whole philosophy is pitch to contact
Yeah.
and your defense isn't covering, I mean, you go from think about the defense we had a couple
Two
years
years ago,
ago.
5 Gold Gloves.
It, Well, look at the outfield alone.
Right.
Bader in center, O'Neill in left,
Yeah.
Carlson in right.
Yeah.
You have
Solid
you have
outfit.
you have two center fielders and then O'Neill, or should we say Broneal? And we'll
Right.
get into him at
Tyler
some point
O'Neill.
down the road. But you know, that's some intense coverage. And then you have at second base, and Nolan Gorman has taken leaps and bounds at second base this
Yeah.
year
It's
on his
experience.
defense. But he's still never going to have the range of Edman.
No.
Like
No.
he's just not, and it's not fair to compare him.
Right.
And so I think, yeah, the defense is hurt definitely. It came out that Arenado had been struggling with some arm fatigue, and that's kind of
Mhm.
cleared up. So he's looking like his old
He is
self
looking a
again.
lot better. I thought that
Um,
too.
and I think that's good. But yeah, I mean, when you're a pitch to contact team, this is what you expect. And,
Mhm.
you have to have a good defense, and we just don't.
Not this year.
And, and,
No.
and that's again, I say it's okay at this point in the year.
It is
I've
what it
kind of
is.
I'm living with it as it
Right.
is. But there
It's
was a
not
stat
okay, but it's the situation we find ourselves in.
there was a stat I looked at a couple days ago,
Hmm.
and at the time we had 25 blown saves.
Oh yeah.
Gets
Yeah.
better. If we had won half of them,
We'd
if
be
we had
first in the
won
Central.
with 12 or 13 of them, we would have been tied with Milwaukee on that
Hmm.
day
Yeah.
for first in the
I
Central.
saw that too.
So if you want to, and again, I think a lot of those blown saves can be tied to that just absolute beating our bullpen took in the first month and a half of the season, where our
Hmm.
pitchers just starters
Yeah.
didn't have it. But at a certain point, it's no, that's not the issue anymore.
Right.
Um, and
Well,
I
the other
think
thing too is
that,
back while we're on those blown saves is, and I don't know if we're still on pace for this, but we were on pace to set the major league record for blown saves in a season. I saw that same tweet you did about us being in first place at that time. We were on pace to be set a new record, which is not a record we want to have. It's kind of like Favre's interception records.
yeah, it's hey, you know what? Far does Favre still lead the league for most interceptions?
I don't know. I just know. I just
I
remember
know
when
I
he did.
know he lost the touchdowns and stuff
Right.
because of Breeze and and then Brady.
Mhm. Right.
But either way, here's a fun question for you, and I haven't had a chance to look this up.
Okay.
When was the last time that we had neither the Yankees or the Cardinals in the playoffs?
I believe it was the early 1990s. 91 maybe, the year before the strike.
It was early 90s. I don't know what year it was exactly, but I mean it's been a while. So you have two, I mean, storied franchises,
Mhm.
not playing up to their history.
No.
So I think there's some, not to spend too much time off of St. Louis, but I think there's some big changes coming for the Yankees as
Right.
well.
Right. Well, and so that year, I think was the last year that we finished bottom of the table in or bottom of the division. Um, I'm sure you know this fact, but we've not finished bottom of the league since 1919. Thankfully, we have 8 games on Colorado with 6 weeks to play, so hopefully we don't lose that streak this year. But I would like it if we finish ahead of the Pirates. Um, but yeah, I mean, and I really want to laugh at the Mets and the Padres and the Yankees, but I know I'm not really allowed to this year. So I'm just, keeping my own mouth shut, minding my own business, and cleaning up my house. Um, I mean, the thing about the pitching staff, though, in general, uh, one of the things that I do like, if you look at our draft picks, our high draft picks the last few years, if you look at a lot of the trades we've made, we have acquired one thing in abundance. And what that is left-handed pitching. So sure, we play in the NL Central, and we all know that the NL Central is weak, right? We all know that. But when you get to the playoffs, to compete, you need left-handed hitting, and because everyone has left-handed hitting, you need left-handed pitching as well at that point. And we have not had good left-handed pitching for a long time. That's why they traded for Liberatore. That's why they keep drafting some of these guys and trading for who they do. I am very high on Liberatore. Any guy whose curveball drops the way his does, like, and his slider's got some nasty movement on it too. I'm pretty high on that. Maybe he, you know, tips his pitches a little bit. Maybe he doesn't. They don't tunnel well enough, and people can tell how different they are. Um, but when he puts it together like that, I think it is something special. Um, the new pitchers that Mo referenced, I mean, gotta imagine that some of them are going to come in free agency. I hope. Um, Trades. I don't know. I don't really think we have the depth anymore for these trades that we want to do.
I think if they're looking to trade, if they call up any team
Mm-hmm.
and they're looking to trade and they say, we want your number one young starter that you're looking to get rid of, Dylan Cease, for example, at
Sure,
Chicago White Sox.
sure, absolutely. They
You're
probably
going to call them up, and
stocks are trash.
you know who the first two names that they're going to want?
Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman,
Yep,
absolutely.
Jordan Walker, Nolan Gorman, and do you part with either of those, right?
No, no, no.
And so
Nolan
it's
Gorman has already exceeded Dylan Carlson, and Dylan Carlson was supposed to be what Nolan Gorman is, but 2 years ahead. And I like Carlson, but nobody will take Carlson when we have Gorman.
the concern here for me with Carlson is we, and again, this is my concern for Cardinals as a whole, is we don't do a good job of knowing where we're at on our own players.
Yeah, we're very bad at that.
Because
I agree.
the reason that we didn't make a big splashy trade at the deadline last year is because we didn't want to part with Nolan or with Dylan Carlson, who's our
Right.
center fielder of the future.
Yep,
But
and then this
then
year
in
we were
spring,
shopping him
but
to
then
everyone.
but then to start the season,
Yeah.
we say, you know what, you're gonna split playing time. We're gonna give Tyler O'Neill the opportunity in center. And to me, it's just a slap in the face to Carlson,
Yeah.
who again is easily the best defensive outfielder on our team.
I don't know if I would say that. Tyler O'Neill, I think, is the best defensive outfielder on our team.
In left field, yes, but you put him in center, guy looks lost.
Well, center is harder, but
so you have Carlson
fair,
who can literally play center, right, or left.
you know who was
across the board.
You know who was the best defensive center fielder on our team?
Harrison Bader.
Harrison Bader.
I'm still sad that we lost him. I love the fact that we got a great return in Jordan Montgomery.
But he's gone already.
Also heartbroken that we just traded him away.
Right.
And
I get
what are you going to do?
Why they traded him, right? Like he wasn't going to re-sign. He wanted to test free agency. Like I get it. It's a shrewd move, and I'm not against it because it is what it is. And I'm happy for Bader because Bader grew up a Yankees fan, like from New York City. Like, not a lot of guys get to go do that.
Yeah. Do you know what the hardest part for me about today's loss against the Mets was, talking about trades from last year?
What?
Do you know who the starting pitcher on the other side was?
I'm about to find out.
Jose Quintana. Yeah, not re-signing that guy. We didn't trade him. We just didn't re-sign him.
Sign him. Right.
We traded for him, and we just didn't. We didn't.
For us
and we didn't even offer him a contract because Mo says, you know what, we got this. Anyway, that's another story for another day. Cardinals injuries. Let's talk about those for a minute.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with one of the more recent ones. So last night, back to back at bats, Edman and then Nootbaar fouled balls right into themselves.
Mm-hmm.
If for those of you who didn't see it, Newts hit the plate and came straight up into his man marbles. And they
baseball player right there.
He's a mid-baseball. I mean, he was on the ground, and God help his future children. I hope nothing is wrong with them. But my favorite part about this whole situation was that if you looked at the injury report, they jumped in and they went full hockey mode. They just listed it as a lower body contusion.
Right.
If that is not the most hockey injury list lit thing that I have seen in a while, especially in another sport, God, that's something. But no, my hope is that Newt's only out of a week or so, gets back to himself and comes back. The way that he had been playing recently is he's been playing lights out, offensively especially. I mean, he's been the spark plug for the team. And he's somebody we need in the lineup. And I think he is either the center fielder or right. He's an outfielder of the future. He's got to be a part of your future plans.
Right now,
what about Edman for you?
I mean, Edman came back today, preemptive taking him out yesterday is what it is. Let me ask you this though, before we get too far into some of these things. Okay. Who do you think right now, and you probably know them, but who do you think in order are the top four from highest to least OPS as of right now
On the
on
Cardinals?
the Cardinals? You're probably going
I
to get
don't
the
know.
four of them right, but I think the order might
I
surprise.
think I'm probably going to mess up the order. Goldie and Arenado, I think, are both in there. I believe that Newt's in there and
Mhm.
Gorman's in there.
Corbin's in,
Gorman would
that's the top four.
Gorman would be Gorman's. It's probably Gorman, Arenado, Newt, and then Goldie.
So Arenado actually is top 837 OPS, which also while we're talking about this, like Arenado and Goldie, like for us to be successful, we need them close to nine, really. And you can't say that, oh well, they've got a 284 batting average and a 507 slugging, and it's like, they're not doing enough. But they're Arenado especially is probably could do with some more walking. But for Goldie, it's more his slug is down this year. But anyway, so it's Nolan Arenado. Second is actually Newbar, 835.
Oh,
He's just right behind him. That's like a single extra base hit probably on the season. Paul Goldschmidt, 820. Gorman, 815. And now here's where it gets really interesting to me. Fifth on the team. Take a guess.
it's going to be somebody you're not going to expect.
I think it's going to be somebody who you would expect if you knew nothing about how the season went.
Yeah. So, like, my guess, this is where I'm going to say it's because the way that the season's gone for this individual, I think it's Contreras.
It is Contreras, 790.
Because when he's been in the lineup, he's played decent.
Well, since the break, I think him and Kisner have been just lights out. I mean, hell, I take it back. Contreras is not fifth. Kisner is fifth
Oh,
with an 800. Um, I am ruling some people out. I am ruling out Ivan Herrera because he's only played in 8 games. He's at 23 bats, so I don't think I can count that. But Kisner has had 159 at bats, and I think that that's reasonable. That's almost as much as O'Neill, who he is just absolutely outslugging. Yeah, wow. O'Neill's slug is 406 this year. That is not good for him.
Yeah. Well, when you sleep on your back funny and you can't play for 3 months, that's what happens.
Right. And then sixth is Brendan Donovan, who has a 787 OPS, 284 average, 365 OBP, 422 slug. That's exactly what you want from Brendan Donovan. You cannot ask for anything more from him right there.
Yeah, and getting into the injuries, right? We talked about Edman and Newt. Donovan's another one.
Yeah.
I don't want them to rush him back. I'd be okay if maybe we saw him at the very end of the season if he was up for it for a couple of games.
Right.
But keep that guy healthy for next year.
Yeah.
Gorman, I think, is supposed to be back this week, it sounded like.
Or
potentially this week.
Retrospective, so I think so.
He could be back this week,
Right.
but again, take it easy with him. And then Matz.
I think you just shut him down for the year.
I think if you bring Matz back, you bring him back out of the bullpen for just to cap some innings and just get some work in, but in non-competitive games.
Right.
But he started to look. Again, this is the tough part for me with Matz, right? Is he was looking like the pitcher we thought he could be finally, and then got hurt again. And so, I think you shut him down. I think you make sure, we get him on a good program as far as, rehabilitating. But I think if we see him, I would prefer to see him kind of in a long reliever in a game where it's like, it's the third inning and we're down by 6 runs. Matz, can you just eat a few innings for us and just take it easy? Just get essentially a bullpen session in during a game.
Yeah.
Here's my biggest question for the Cardinals right now.
Okay, I'm listening.
Yeah, and why the hell is Motter still on the fucking field?
Oh, I don't.
The guy is absolute hot garbage. We have a plethora of young guys that would love to just have a shot to play a few games and just give some guys some at bats, bring some guys up. But like Motter, the guy has been designated for assignment more
multiple
times this
times,
season.
and he's
Nobody
clearing
else
every
in
time.
nobody else in the league wants the dude.
Right,
There's a reason for that.
right,
And we just need to, be okay with that. But the fact that we have, and I hope that, as it turns to September, we
right.
we don't see him anymore, and we are giving some of those at bats. I mean, like, bring up Teague Hence, and even if he does,
Bring up
not Teague
Mason Wynn.
Hence, Mason Wynn, yeah,
Right,
bring up Mason Wynn, let him play short for a week or two,
absolutely.
and just see what you got, right? Because the minor league season ends before the major league season, so you've got some time there to get these
Yep,
guys some extra at bats. But
right,
that's my biggest frustration right now is every time I look at the field and I see Taylor Motter on the field, it absolutely pains me.
right. No, I agree.
Um,
I didn't realize that
ESPN came
Jose
out with
Fermin
their
playing tonight.
ESPN came out with their top 50 prospects rankings, by the way, in all of baseball. Um, their number one is a guy that I wish we could have, and maybe someday we will. Jackson Holiday. Maybe he'll come back home.
Currently, his little
Um,
brother is expected to be the number one overall pick in the draft soon.
well, join the family, I guess. But if we get a couple of Matt Holiday's kids back in here, get Matt Holiday back in as a bench coach or not
Absolutely.
under Ollie, that'd be great. But
Yeah,
the
I'm
Cardinals actually had two in the top 50. So I think anytime you have more than one in the top 50 when you're in a 32 team league or 30 team league, excuse me, if that means you're doing pretty good. But Mason Wynn
mhm.
and Team Kent's were both in the top 50, and I think that looks good for us.
Yeah, I think those are our only two in the ESPN top 100, and some people are kind of upset about that. Saying we should be doing a better job of finding young talent and whatever. And it's like, okay, Libertor is no longer considered a minor leaguer, probably. Jordan Walker is definitely no longer considered a minor
Neither
leaguer,
one of they're neither one's considered a prospect
right?
anymore.
Like these people move up and they vacate a spot. Like that's how it works. Like you don't, no one's playing top 100 minor league count is how you win the World Series. That's not how the fucking game goes.
And yeah, and I think, my thing with giving these young guys a shot at the big league level, I think about a few years ago, and there was a certain guy, and he came up and he just kind of would play wherever we needed him and just impressed across the field and
Got three
made
guys
a
that can make.
spot for him, made himself a spot. This is prior to Brendan Donovan, if that helps. So you can eliminate Brendan Donovan, and really created a name for himself, but didn't really have a spot. So we were able to trade or let go. I guess we didn't trade, but we were able to let go of and not resign a Gold Glove caliber player
Yeah.
because we knew we had somebody who could play for him. And Tommy Edman was not on anybody's radar
Nope. And then he went
as a
out
top
for that
prospect.
that very Gold Glove the next year.
And then, yeah, who beat Colton Wong for that Gold Glove the next year? The guy who replaced him. And I think giving some of these young guys just a chance for a few weeks here at the end of
Yeah.
the season to see what they got kind of gives us what to look forward to, right? There's still some fun storylines, and I think there's still good reason to try to get out to the ballpark or try to watch the games. Like I said, trying to see what some of these young guys do. I think that's going to be huge, and we're going to start to see more and more of them over the coming weeks
Right.
start to trickle in and then fill in some spots. What is our rotation going to look like? And who is really is anybody here going to impress or really make a name for themselves to
Absolutely.
take a spot in the rotation? And then my favorite storyline, and I'm a sucker for nostalgia because, I mean, I remember this guy coming up as a rookie. I remember in his sophomore season, or not in his sophomore, a couple years later, getting to close out one of my biggest Cardinals memories of all time was this guy closing out game 7 against the Mets with Carlos Beltran, who had been the absolute Cardinals killer the previous 2 years. And Adam Wainwright, his chance for going after those 200 wins,
Mhm.
which he really should have already had. Think through his career, you would think, but um, the guy has some of my favorite moments in Cardinals baseball. The
Absolutely.
guy got robbed of a Cy Young because people split votes between him and
Mhm.
Carpenter. So
Yeah.
Lincecum snuck in and stole it from him the year he
Yeah.
should have won.
Yeah.
And I think
And I think if he had won that, if he had won the Cy Young that year, this whole conversation about 200 wins would not be happening.
Oh, I agree 100%.
Or
And
well, and the other thing is he like, and it's not that uncommon now, sure, but I mean, he did lose a whole season for Tommy John, and it happened to be a season that we won the World Series, so he doesn't even can't really claim that he did much towards that either. Uh, but no, I 100% agree with you. As far as the giving the guys a chance, I mean, I can kind of see them wanting to say, well, we don't want them to come up if they're not ready and like hurting their confidence and then kind of delaying them because, they saw what they weren't ready to see yet. And it's like, you call them up and you just say, hey, look, it doesn't matter how you do. We want you to know what it looks like so that way you can gauge what you need to be doing to get to
yeah,
this point. Like, we don't care if you strike out every time. There's no pressure about that. Just go out there and play and see what it looks like. And
and I
you
think
might surprise us.
and I think you see it with some of the other teams that,
Mhm.
we talk about
Absolutely.
these other teams that it's never been the Cardinals' position, at least not
Mhm.
in recent memory.
No,
But
not like
other
10
teams
years.
will
Yeah.
call up these young guys, and these young guys will absolutely tear it up in September, and they're like, "Oh my God, who is this guy?" And it's like, well, he's playing really well, but he came up and he had zero pressure.
Hmm.
They're not in a pennant race. He could just come up and just let it fly.
Right.
And I think that's exciting. We've missed on some of our pitching prospects and trading some absolute studs away. And I think I don't want to see us do the same thing. I'm concerned that any deal we make with a pitcher, I know we talked about the
Mm-hmm.
Gorman, Jordan Walker thing. I think they're going to ask for, Graceffo or Tink Hence or one of those
Mm-hmm.
guys that we really need to
Step up.
not get rid of.
Yeah.
Ideally, if we're going to have a future with our pitchers, if we just trade a bunch of guys away for veterans, we're going to be in the same position we were in
Right.
right now in just a few years. And I think there's a big piece to that, but what we do with it is going to be key with how we sign these pit. Either if we're going to have to go to free agency, and that's the biggest thing. And it's something Mo has gotten sticker shock and backed out of so many times recently,
Absolutely.
that I hope we don't do the same.
One thing I will say before we wrap up here, as far as the ones we quote unquote missed on, and I mean, sure, the Rosarinas and the Alcantaras are out there, but it was not that long ago when you could make the case that we should have kept Colton Wong. And I mean, even as good as Tommy Edman has been, like a Colton Wong type player for who he was at that time is very hard to justify not resigning. You could make the case about what Carson Kelly was doing and how we did not have, um, great plans post Yachty at that time. Well, this week, Colton Wong and Carson Kelly were both DFA'd, right?
Yeah,
So, I mean, yeah, they had a couple of good years afterwards, but clearly in their current situations, it was not working out for them anymore. Um, and that, I think that's a thing that can easily get missed in all of everything that we've had going on.
I don't disagree. The Sandy Alcantara trade, right? Like literally were trading for a guy who was what's top five in MVP voting the year before.
Yeah.
And we made a knee jerk remove because we had to, right? We just
Right.
lost who we thought was our outfielder of the future in a car accident. We needed something. So, that was a tragic accident with Tavares, and we lost Oscar. We needed somebody. We tried to fill that gap. And that's not actually who we wanted. Ozuna's not who we went after. We went after Stanton. They said they weren't going to move Stanton,
Yeah.
and I don't think we could have ever paid the price for Stanton. And again, talk about injury history that we struggle
I
with
know
already.
we missed
But
we dodged a real bullet with Stanton with missing Stanton because he has
but
not played very much as much as he should for as much as he's getting paid.
yeah,
What you need out of
but
it.
but and so I can't fault them because we didn't know who he was going to be. And the same thing with my struggle with the Rosarena is that we didn't have a spot for him at the time, so
Yeah,
we
but it
didn't.
goes back to the same conversation we just had, right?
And we
You're
thought
very
we
bad at
were
evaluating
we
our own talent.
yeah, but I mean we were getting Libertor back. We thought we were getting a top prospect, right?
Mm-hmm.
And really the person we were trying to move on from in that trade was Jose Martinez, if you forgot. So
Yeah,
that trade was actually to get rid of Jose Martinez, and the Rays did a good job of scouting out Rosarena.
Rays did what the Rays do.
The other person, that the other pitcher, and this absolutely pains me to think about the fact that we traded away both of these guys, Sandy Alcantara, and then we also traded away Zach Gallen
Hmm.
with the Diamondbacks. And it goes again, it just highlights like, and again,
Wasn't he
rating
part of the
prospects.
Goldschmidt trade?
No, I'm pretty sure, and I'll have to double check which trade he was a part of. He got traded from somebody else to the Diamondbacks. There was nobody on the Diamondbacks roster after Carson Kelly was DFA'd. There's nobody on their roster anymore left in their system from the Goldie trade. Like we absolutely 110% won that trade.
Who do you
Uh,
think won the trade for Arenado?
oh, definitely the Rockies.
Definitely the Rockies.
Definitely the
It only cost
Rockies. I
them
mean,
$50 million to send him to us.
yeah. So it's is what it is. But so he was part of Zach Gallen went to Miami, and I think he made it, which probably tells me he went from us to Miami.
Hmm.
I think so. I think we gave up Gallen and Alcantara to Miami
Hmm.
for Ozuna. And hindsight's always 2020, but like, how do you give up two future Cy Young candidates?
I mean,
It goes. I don't know
Miami's
who's
also,
evaluating this, but we have to do better moving forward.
but also to be fair in that situation is, there are four teams. There are four teams I think of that like can just absolutely develop pitching at a level far better than anyone else. And Miami is one of those four. And there's a few other teams that I think you could easily make a case for, but that there are four teams that are a clear step above with pitcher development. And
Tampa Bay, Miami. What are your other two?
Houston and Cleveland. And I think you could make a case for the Dodgers because it doesn't seem to matter who's on the mound for them.
I think you make it the case for the Dodgers. I think previously, I think there was a potential case for the Giants as well, but
Yeah, yeah, the
they were a
Giants.
team that
They
just
were so good.
and this is another one. You'll when I say the team, you're going to be like, oh yeah, for sure. Seattle.
Yeah, yeah,
Seattle churns out pitchers, but they cannot put together the rest another 18 players to play around.
yeah.
Poor King Felix should have had 400 wins in his career, and the guy
but
never had a chance.
I mean, they actually look pretty solid this year. Where are they at with the playoff line? They are, wow, 8 games out. God, the AL is so stacked this year. I mean, Seattle is, they're right now 11 games over 500. If they just go 500 the rest of the way, that's a 93 win team, like I guess
Mm-hmm.
a 90 win team. Um, and they're not going to make the playoffs. That's with how the standings currently are. I'm looking at them right now.
Well, when you're in a division with the way the Rangers have played and then the Astros, it's tough, man. But I
Yeah,
mean, like they've got some young. I mean, they've got George Kirby and Logan Gilbert both
hmm,
absolute young studs, and there's a good chance they'll trade one of them, if not both, in the offseason if the
hopefully to
price is
us.
right.
Hopefully to us, and we fleece them.
If we can pull off another Arenado bank heist and for one of these guys, I am all in favor, but I'm real nervous if we trade for one of these guys that we're going to lose Gorman.
Yeah, and I don't.
It's hard to lose a guy that has 40 homer potential year in and year out.
Right. Well, and I think Gorman is the natural designated hitter for our team as it's currently constructed. He is the natural designated hitter moving forward.
Yep.
You can slot him in for rest days for, at third base, at second base, wherever. You can move Gorman around and then have him or you can move Donovan around and have Gorman take the field when you need to. Um, the real question is, and this is the last thing I want to ask you before we have to wrap up because we're already at about an hour and 5 minutes. Does Mason Wynn make the big league roster next year? And if he does he do it out of camp?
I think Mason Wynn makes the big league roster. I don't think he makes it out of camp. I think they hold him back.
Yeah.
Unless the only way he makes the big league roster out of camp next year if he hitting like 450 or 500. Because we are so deep on infield we got Donovan, we have Edman, and we have Gorman, and we'll talk about this more. We'll do it when we do a roster breakdown in the offseason, but unless one of those guys moves, he does. Now, if one of those three moves, he breaks camp.
Exactly.
But if all three of them are on the roster, he doesn't break camp with the big league team.
And that's exactly how I see it too. Is if and it's not Donovan that's going to move. Donovan's going to stay. He's essentially a 10th starter, and he can play literally every position. It's Edman or Gorman, and I think it's probably more interesting Gorman, but I could also see them moving Edman because one of Edman's greatest skills is that he's pretty quick, and that is a skill that deteriorates with age. So I would absolutely, I would be gutted to see Tommy Edman leave. He is everything we want out of a Cardinals player. Uh, but yeah, I think we've probably exhausted our topics for the day. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think we've gone on long enough, and if people are still with us, God bless them. Um, I think moving forward again, we'll try to put these out, like I said, once a week if we can. Maybe try to this first episode's been a long one. Try to keep it to closer to that 30 to 40, 45-minute mark. And I don't know, maybe our producer John here can fix some of my ramblings and make it a little cleaner to listen to.
It's just going to be 30 minutes of me talking, and you're just going to be standing there nodding your head the whole time. I'm just going to edit every Tyler part out other than the intro.
You know what? Let's do it. Tyler, you shared this post, but I didn't hear you say a word. You know what? It's better that way.
Better. It's all for the best. All right. Well, thank you guys for listening.
All right. Have a good one, guys.